Hi, Paul Sakis, Good News Planet. I'm speaking to Jared Hewitt. Hello, Jared. How are you?
Hey, Paul. I'm doing well today. How are you doing?
Okay. Jared is #1 international best-selling author and a proven approach to help leaders achieve their dreams. He's written a new book. The Answer is Energy, a 30-day guide to creating your ideal life, embracing true abundance, and knowing your worth from within. The energy is not the energy in our Mother Earth, it's the energy in you, I guess. Jared, where's the energy?
It's all energy. we're talking basically about consciousness as energy, Paul, and we're talking about there is that energy from the Earth because it's that concept that scientifically, if you were to look at your hand under a microscope, you could basically at some point you would see through it. You would see the atoms, you'd see the cells, you'd see the neutrons, and you see a field. You see a unifying field that everything is connected to. So we start to look at how one and how connected all things are. And we start taking that principle back into what that means about who we are as people, what that means about what we are and how we are on the planet. And we start to look at our thoughts. And we start to look at how our belief systems create who we are, create our lives, and it gives us a much deeper understanding of who we are, why we are, and how we create our lives.
How do we? How does the book go about doing that? How does the book go about? So I'm a person who's in need of, I guess, do we call it self-help, self-awareness, self-growth? I now hear us speaking. How do somebody? Is it a sort of a manual, or is it actually?
It is. So it mimics my journey a little bit. I was born. I've been doing this forever. I was born with sort of what people would describe as maybe precognitive or psychic abilities, where I could see energy, sense energy. A lot of people out there will understand it more in terms of empathy or empath, where be it in New York, you can walk into a subway and you feel the hustle and the bustle of the city. Where you walk into a spa, you just kind of feel that peaceful quietness. There is, we are all biological, biomorphic beings that are constantly picking up information in our energy field. And so we start out with the book. I do 30-day retreats, 21-day retreats, and we start out by asking the question, what is energy? And so we look at, again, who we are, why we are, what we are, and really kind of breaking down the fundamentals of our thoughts, of what our past experiences in this life have been, what our stories are, and how we've gotten to the place that we are now. And we go chapter by chapter looking at different ways of understanding the self. For example, I said we start with energy, then we look at the moment of now, where we look at how free we are to exist in the moment of now, how distracted we can be, whether it's social media, whether it's media as a whole, whether it's work, whether it's relationships, things that pull our focus, things that we believe, the things that we have invested our own identity in, but that aren't really who we are, that keep us from that space where we're able to find our center. We look at what worthiness is, what real freedom is. That's a big one for a lot of people. A lot of people think that freedom, or they approach freedom as the energy of escape. But when you approach freedom as the energy of escape, we get into that space where you're starting to push against rather than to create in the sort of positive, affirmative, this is what I desire, this is where I'm going way. So we look at passion and purpose, and there's 30 chapters, and we basically walk through fear, control, our family, our genetic patterns, things that, some things are sort of, a lot of us have heard the phrase sins of the father, right? 7 generations. There's biblical phrases, Torah, religious things of that nature as well. But we explore really what that looks like energetically, and that looks like things where people say, oh, your grandfather did that, or oh, your grandmother did that. And it's these sort of familial traits that people inherit. And so we start to look at, okay, how much of this is genetic versus how much of this is sort of core belief that I've picked up, that if I'd have been born to, a different family, 10,000 miles away, or if I had a head trauma that I suddenly woke up from one day, who would I be? Would I be the same person? And so we walk through money, we walk through basically every single aspect of what I would teach in a 21-day or a 30-day seminar, this one being a 30-day because, going for people who are brand new to energy work, really looking at, what makes us who we are and how can we begin to empower ourselves to understand that, we're not those past narratives, we're not those past stories, and every single moment we have the power to create something new.
You would like to also share the thoughts of meditation, and you even have bonus online meditations included. So why meditation?
Like every single chapter, I sort of have a meditation, don't sort of have one, I do have one at the end of every chapter, and I did that to help everybody find a space where, it's one thing to just tell somebody something, to give you a piece of knowledge or information, but to then give you the experience of that, that is something that from a physiological standpoint and biological standpoint, you now have a template of what that experience is. For example, when we talk about nourishment or we talk about love, there are people that, much like myself, who did not have, the best experience growing up with that, who, when maybe we say the word God or we say the word universe or we talk about parents or we talk about nurturing, we, instead of plugging into a more sort of pure source love, we plug into the story, right? Because you're kind of filtering through the linguistic aspect. And so by having the meditation at the end of each chapter, you're able to go into a space where, okay, I've just learned this sort of, we'll call it a lesson. I've read this anecdote about this person or maybe Jared himself. I've walked through this process. Now I can go through this step by step and actually give myself an experiential understanding of what it is so that I can feel it, so that it becomes real for me rather than just a piece of information that someone's given me.
Here's a powerful meditation that you have right here at the beginning. The answer is energy meditation. My body is filled with buoyant joy and possibility. My capability for abundance, joy, and fulfillment is endless. With every breath I take, I inhale peace and exhale love. I am. Love is its deepest level. I am one of the energy which powers the stars. I am perfect just as I am. I am loved by all that is. So would somebody sit there? I mean, this is so powerful. It's beautifully written. And say this to themselves for a few minutes, for as long as they can? Or
yeah, the way I
sort of structured it would.
Yeah, the way I structured it, there's some bonus things that you get with the book. I think on page 2 or 3, there's a thing where you can download some bonus meditations as well to listen to. But you would go through and you would read the chapter, and then each chapter will finish up a little bit differently than the last, and they kind of all build on each other. And you would sit there and, you would say, okay, so there's sort of a different approach, and I kind of walk you through it in the book. I don't want to give it away right at the gate, but it's basically the first chapter. We talk about the difference between what it is to say the words versus what it is to feel them. And so it's one thing to say, okay, yeah, I'm loved. But it's a whole other thing to be able to say, okay, take a breath, take a conscious breath, and feel your body. And sometimes you go, okay. And then it's another thing to say, okay, now let yourself say, I'm loved. Let yourself now, instead of saying I'm loved, let yourself feel I'm loved. And some people go, I don't even know if I can do that. Okay, well, just pretend, or what would it feel like if you could be loved, where love was a safe, all-encompassing, safe, held, nurtured. And so we walk you through all of those steps. I say we, just meaning myself through the voice of the book, going into that space of what it is to actually be able to have those experiences where you are able to feel confident and comfortable with your own voice and your own self, so that you can start to unravel and then indeed discover that light from within.
Let me go to one chapter that is grief and pain. That's part of life, and as people get older, that's even more intimate into their daily living, right? Dealing with older folks and our pain and so on and so forth. What's some good thoughts here on how to deal with grief and pain?
So I'm glad that you actually said that, because grief and pain were a big part of my story as well for a very long time. And a lot of times, especially within spiritual communities and kind of even self-help communities, there's a lot of people that just go kind of, oh, no, just affirm it away. Don't look at it. Go do something different. And from a psychological perspective, that becomes very unhealthy, because it's kind of like having this pile of rotten food in your apartment, in your house, in your room, and no matter what you do, it's there, and you're trying to ignore it, but the more you ignore it, the more it stinks. And so by being able to acknowledge it, and by being able to look at it, and being able to understand, and that's I think that's chapter 22, if my memory is correct. Yeah, chapter 22. By the time we get to the space of grief and pain, you've gotten enough tools to be able to look at some of what your core stories are, and you'll have a much better understanding of how and why you function the way that you do function. And so when we get to grief and pain, we understand that it's okay to have, it's kind of like fear, it's okay to have fear, but what can happen is sometimes we let the fear have us. And so by the time we get to the grief and pain point within the book, we understand that when we can turn and acknowledge what that grief and pain is, and we really acknowledge and understand that it's not something that defines us, yet it's something that has been with us, we can start to heal it in a different way, because we're no longer trying to ignore it. We're no longer trying to push it out. There's a chapter in the book where I talk about resistance. And it's kind of a cliche to say what we resist persists, but grief and pain, to an extent, are that same way. And that's not to say, just invite more pain in, because that also would not be a comfortable situation. But it's being able to look at your life and really understand, this is how I got to this point. And in doing so, you begin to give yourself the power back to make the changes. Now, when we talk about grief or pain from trauma and loss, there are also several different approaches I talk about in the book that, move back into the infiniteness of who we are as oneness, and really being able to tune in and tap into that love that then allows some of that to dissipate as well.
I'm going to read a meditation here, if you don't mind, on this grief and pain one. The book is really very, very special, and every chapter is a winner here.
Thank you, Paul.
And I love the way you approach it. The 30 days, it's not going to take you 30 days to read a chapter, but it might take you 30 days.
Yeah, it's about a 3-hour read if you had a plane ride. Yeah.
So the good point is, but it might take you 30 days to think about a chapter.
Yes.
If you want to, you could, because these are serious parts of our lives that you're speaking about, and you do a great job here. For example, on this meditation source, that sometimes in my life I feel contrast. Just that word alone is powerful.
Yeah.
I feel grief. Okay, give me an understanding of what this represents, and willing spirit to commit to knowing what I know and knowing who I am. I am infinite, I am connected, I am open, heart of joy, ever expanding and choosing, and right now I choose love. I choose union, I choose connection, and so it is. So we're always getting back the inner soul into the now within it, with
yes.
you and your thinking.
Yeah, because for me, and again, there are many, I think, approaches to get there. This is simply the approach that I've taken throughout my journey, which I also share in the book. It goes into that space of, if you can be present, then you're acting instead of reacting. If you can have that connected space to source, you can know your sovereignty, and you can understand that you're a being at choice. You can feel that connection and love, so that you can be choosing from a divine heart of love. You can be choosing from that space rather than anything else. And from that place, you're opening to inspiration. You're opening to healing. You're opening to being whole. You're opening to the spaces and places of creating the life that you want, rather than resisting, pushing, fighting, all of the things that I was doing for a very, very long time, for decades in my own life.
Do you actually have classes? Do you have courses? Do you go around the country and groups get together and spend a few days together?
I do these retreats. We do them online. I have there's a membership site I have where I get on there every single day and I answer people's questions. There's been some months where people don't have a lot of questions, and there's other months where I've answered literally a couple thousand people's questions or a couple thousand questions that have come through. So we do calls. I do private one-on-one consultations with people, and I do weekly calls as well. So, yeah, we have a quite a big, thriving tribe of really wonderful, wonderful souls.
What's abundance for Jared?
Happiness. That's kind of a cheat answer, but abundance for me, most people when we say abundance, they go right to money. Abundance for me is it's a mix of a lot of things, but it winds up with happiness because to me, happiness is that space of not just contentment, but it's where you're overflowing. You are in that space of joy, and in that joy is connection, and that joy is everything you need in the moment of now to feel what it is, not just to be content, but where that contentment gets cranked up from the 10 to 11. To go back to Spinal Tap, ours goes to 11, and then you're happy in that moment, and so it's a space of obviously, there was a time in my life when 15 years ago I couldn't even pay bills, and that wasn't necessarily abundance, and so I could have been happy in that space, but it wouldn't have been abundance. So I'd say balance is in there as well. When you can completely provide for yourself in all ways and understand really that you are the creation of everything that you desire in your world, but be able to tap into that infinite source of, if you want to call it God, of the universe, whatever it is, feeling connected, feeling at one with, and allowing that to move through you, with you, as you, and feeling that inspiration and allowing it to move. That's a pretty darn good place to be.
Jared's a smart guy. You got a lot of understanding of life. I don't know if I'm smart enough to say you're a smart guy, but
I appreciate it. I've lived a lot of life in the last 40 years. There were a lot of ups and downs, but there's nothing that I would have changed because everything got me to where I am today.
Well, there's appreciation of your life. You appreciate your life, right?
Very much. I do. I very much do. And I, there was a time where I was laid up in bed having heart problems, had deep depression, deep anxiety, even going back into my teens, diagnosed with PTSD and agoraphobia. And I think, I've joked before with folks that if 40-year-old me went back to talk to, 20-year-old me, 20-year-old me probably would have, tried to pull an IV out of my arm just to get up and punch me in the face. Because I couldn't have handled the sort of happiness from this end of myself. But I appreciate 20-year-old me. I appreciate everything that I went through in all of those years. I appreciate the struggle and the strife. Because again, it's kind of like weights. Not that I like lifting weights, but every single repetition, every single time you up that weight. So every single thing that I saw as a problem was really source giving me, an opportunity to build a new muscle that I was going to need to exercise down the line in order to create the life that I wanted. So when you can start to look at life from that perspective, and it really does take a lot of conscious choice, which is, again, part of why I wrote this book, because, we've got what the world needs now is love, sweet love, but we also need the awareness and the consciousness and the ability to choose. And there's a lot of anger that we need to be able to flush out and to get rid of and to transmute to do that. But when we can do that, we can really look back with an appreciation that allows us to dive much deeper into who we are and to be who, in fact, we were truly born to be, rather than to go the other way, which is where we can turn kind of spiteful or against each other or angry and things of that nature.
We're very involved with world peace, and we're even coming out with a movie, the Internet, Woodstock Forever, Peace, Love, and Hope this year. Okay, yeah. And I'm going to send you some of it if you have a moment to take a look at it. I've asked many people, what does peace mean to them? Jared, what does peace mean to you?
I'm a big fan of song lyrics. I like to go subconscious a lot of times, and I'll ask people, what's the first song that comes into your mind? And when you said that to me, it was, "Come on, people, now smile on your brother. Everybody get together, try and love one another right now." that is peace for me. But peace for me is a world where, having been on the opposite coast from you in Los Angeles, my first experiences with that coming from the South were a little different, where, even in the South we didn't always mean it, but we at least smile to your face. And in Los Angeles, everybody's looking around, nobody cares. And it's kind of how I took it when I first got there. And I want to live in a world, Paul, where, everybody is not only not afraid, but feels emboldened to smile at each other and to care about each other. And because I think in that space of where we can connect to each other on that level, even if that level is just understanding we all have our stories, we all have our burdens, but in that moment, I see you, I acknowledge you, I see you seeing me and acknowledging me, and we feel that appreciation for each other, we can find that sense of peace. So for me, peace is our ability simply to love each other, to be together, and to understand that, we are, in fact, one.
I love it. Last question. Talking about love, we also have a channel for love, Jared. In addition to our Good News broadcast,
shop. I love it.
20 years focusing on a lot of what we're speaking about today. We ask people, what does love mean to them? So last question, Jared. What's your website? Let me know that as well right now.
It's JaredHewitt.com. It's JaredHewitt.com. And actually, if people between now and I think March 1st go to JaredHewitt.com/free book, you can actually get the book for free. You just pay shipping. I think it's $6. And you'll also get 3 meditations, and you can get the digital version right now. The actual publication date on Amazon still says May, but the publisher has moved it back to March 12th is pub date. So that's when the book will ship out. So JaredHewitt.com and then JaredHewitt.com/free book, you can get it for free. Love to me, that's a really good question, Paul. That's a very big question. It's the ability to know thyself, but in a way that includes an appreciation and understanding and a connectedness to all that is. Because when you have that space, you have that in a way that is birthed from, inclusive of the open heart. And when you are in that space, you experience love not from a human perspective, or not from simply a chemical reaction or a pheromone reaction. You actually experience what this is to be in this sort of enraptured space of appreciative oneness with all life, with all creation. And from that, you know your infinite nature, and you know that there is not anything in this world that you cannot do or be, even if it's just simply a feeling. But you know the infinite possibility of the universe. And I'd say really that is love to me, is knowing that infinite possibility, being able to tune into that, to feel that coursing through your being, and then to realize that it's not just something coursing through you, that it is actually you, that you are a living, breathing, individuated expression of that energy.
Whoa. All right. The answer is energy. Jared Hewitt. Jared, are you sure you're not like 70 or 80 years old?
I think I'm a few hundred years old.
You've got some wisdom going on here that at 40, geez, I don't think I was even close. Really, very, very brilliant dude. All right.
Thank you, sir. I appreciate it.
Jared, thanks so much for sharing the good news with us, and much success with the book, and success I can see for you would be people taking that book and making their life have more energy. So thank you so much for sharing.
Thank you, everyone, for listening today. I appreciate you all.
Okay. Take care. Bye-bye.